Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are talking about Overgrown. And this is a Kickstarter preview, and it is a paid preview, so we're just going to be talking about the nuts and bolts. We're going to keep our opinions out of it. Also, we do want to point out this is still an early preview copy, so there is going to be a bunch of stuff that changes before the final version.
Overgrown is a 1 to 4 player game designed by Bryan, and it is a tile placement game where you have an abandoned city and you are trying to re-wild it and bring back the ecosystems and wildlife. Let's look at how it plays.
You start the game with a city board with a crater on it, a large aura frame in front of you, and a small frame on the corner of the ether board, which is filled with tiles. On your turn, you draft the 2 tiles in any space in any aura frame. Then you place those tiles on 2 adjacent empty spaces in your city, and then you place your aura on the corresponding places on the ether board. If the tiles you place match one of the wilderness cards, place a wildlife token on the depicted space and replace the card. If you have a set of earth, water, and sun tiles in a group, remove all 3 tiles and replace one of them with a novel ecosystem. If this now means you have 3 connected novel ecosystems, replace them with a flourishing ecosystem. And if that flourishing ecosystem is next to any pollution, remove that pollution from your board, and then it's the next player's turn. The game ends as soon as someone can't place both of the tiles that they drafted. Then you add up points for removed pollution, novel ecosystem tiles, flourishing ecosystems, which also allow adjacent tiles to score again, and wildlife tokens. And then the greatest rewilded city is named.
So that's the overview of how it plays, and the core part really is those auras, which are the wooden frames, because those limit what tiles you can select. And importantly, after you've placed your own tiles, that's where your frame is going to go. So that is going to open up or close off options for the other players.
Yeah, and that really is the core interaction of this game. It really is the core of this game, is what you are doing with those aura frames. If you put it right on top of someone else's frame, it means they don't get anything else. You just replace that frame. So that is kind of the perfect situation, but at the same time, you do want to set yourself up with things sometimes for the next round. So if you can put that on lots of good stuff, maybe you still have good stuff waiting for you. If you only have it on bad stuff, maybe you've only got bad stuff waiting for you. So there really is a bit of a push-pull and some interesting decisions in like what you're taking as well and where you're putting that.
Yeah, because it's not just going to be where your frame ends up that you're thinking about for where you're putting your tiles, because you are factoring in everything else as well. You definitely want to try and create those groups of 3 different terrains, because that means you get to clear off those 3 and replace it with an ecosystem tile. And this game, it's only a 4 by 4 grid, so there's only 15 tiles. So you're really going to want to try and clear those off as efficiently as you can.
Yeah, and that is a big thing, is that you're building out and then kind of like pushing in and building out and pushing in, because you are going to fill up that board pretty fast. But as soon as you get those groups of 3, 2 of those leave and one of them's there. And then when you get those 3 of the smaller tiles, you take 2 of those off and you put on that big tile. And that big tile can really clear stuff off, because that can also get rid of the pollution. And there is no way in this game that you're going to get through without any pollution.
No, you're definitely going to end up with some, but if you clear off the pollution tiles, you do get a point. So it is a benefit, but requires planning ahead. And the other nice thing is that if you have a group of a bunch of colors, which sometimes that's all you're left to choose from is one of a color that you already have a lot, there are the wildlife cards. And so that can be important as well, because you can then put a wildlife token on and get points that way.
Yeah, and that is nice that you've got both that having different ones are going to build up those ecosystems, and also having same ones is going to get the wildlife, which means most times there's going to be something in the tiles that is useful for you. Also, if there's nothing on the board, all of that stuff's going to refill. So sometimes that can really be a plus for you as well. Just have everything refill, and now there's all sorts of new options. And so there is that too, but you add more pollution when you do that as well. So that can get more dangerous, and actually gets a lot more dangerous later in the game, because as more of those tiles go out on the boards, there's kind of a more pollution in their ratio, I think. So there is kind of a heightening danger as the game goes on.
So in terms of replayability, this is a tile placement puzzle game, and that puzzle is going to feel different every game. You always have to be reactive with what tiles you have available and how you're putting those on your board, and that is always going to be different every game.
Yeah, and games do feel different in this, because there have been games where I get a lot of pollution at first, and then I'm really thinking, okay, how am I going to build everything around this so that I can get one of those 2-level tiles out and wipe out a bunch of this pollution? And the good thing is pollution isn't necessarily bad, in that when you take it off your board, it's worth a point at the end of the game. So if you play that right, it can actually not quite be helpful, but be not like the worst thing that you get. But there's other games where I'm building up really fast and I feel like I'm comboing quickly, but maybe I'm not getting enough of those wildlife tokens, and those can be worth big points at the end of the game. So then at the end of the game, I look over, you've got tons of wildlife, and I realize, oh crap, I needed to do a mix of things. And so, yeah, it does feel like a different puzzle every time.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that also contributes is the length of the game, because the game is done as soon as somebody can't place both of their tiles. So we've had some games where we've really been able to build up ecosystems and have a few of those level 2 tiles, and other games have ended just like surprisingly quickly, and you've hoped that you've got enough points when that comes.
Yeah, there are definitely times that I feel like I can set up, and there are definitely times where I feel like I just hope you don't notice how bad it's going for me, and I've squeezed out a few points, because I will say I have not beaten Jess at this game yet. Not only have I not beaten Jess at this, my highest score is lower than her average score. So I am definitely still getting my head around this game. But even with that, I can say that this puzzle has felt different every time, and I felt like I've gotten a little better at it, at least each game.
So moving on to player count, and it plays for 1 to 4 players, and it will feel a bit different at each of the player counts. At 2 players, you are very much aware of what your opponent is doing, what they're trying to do, and what the state of their board is. So you will, where possible, try to put your aura, your wooden frames down in a very inconvenient spot if that works for you.
Yeah, it is really cutthroat at 2 players, but at the same time, you can kind of set yourself up. So if you put your frame over 2 good things, you know that they can only take one of those. You know that you have got something good coming back to you in the next turn, but you rarely do that, because you really do want to make sure that they're not getting good stuff. And so I do find at 2 players, I more often take a not perfect turn just to try and make you not get a good turn. Make sure that you're taking a little bit of pollution.
Yeah, because at more players, that's just more people to keep track of, that I found myself really just more placing optimally for where I want things to go. But you still do it a little bit, because again, if you can put your frame over somebody else's frame, you are limiting the next player's options, and that's always going to be, well, bad for them, but good for you.
Yeah, I found at 4 players, it was rare that all 4 frames ended up on the board, because anytime you put your frame exactly where someone else is, you just replace theirs and put yours there. And so there are fewer spaces, and I don't think anyone in a 4-player game wants anyone to have 8 spaces that they can choose from. So often you've got like 5, maybe 6 spaces. So there are more available than 2 players, but I never felt like there were more tiles really available, even though there are more frames out.
Yeah, and I think part of that is you can't set yourself up because there's going to be so many players' turns before it comes back to you. So you wouldn't do the thing where you put your double frame over 2 good piles because both of those piles will be gone by the time it comes back to you.
Yeah, so it is a little bit more reactive at those higher player counts. And it does kind of ramp up to that point where you're getting more pollution on the board a little bit faster. And the other thing is it's harder to track where everyone is at. So the game can end a little bit surprisingly sometimes. So sometimes more at 4 players, you're taking those right now points instead of setting up for that thing that's 3, maybe 4 turns away, because you're not sure if there's going to be 3, maybe 4 turns. So there's just a little bit of a different pace.
And this also plays solo, and I haven't played it myself, but I saw you play it, and it's even more of a puzzle.
Yeah, it is. So the solo game isn't, it's not a bot, but it's also not a best score mode. So what it is it's a different kind of puzzle mode. So when you're setting up the board, you add a pollution to your board when you put the first pollution into the middle ether board. And then also you've got 1 wildlife card. That's the standard version of the game. Then you need to get rid of all the pollution on your board, so the one you started with, and get all the pollution off of the ether, which is going to be 3, onto your board, and clear all of that away and do the wildlife card, which didn't sound that hard to me at first, but is really a puzzle to take and remove all of those, because also you got to make sure that you've also always got tiles that you can pick up, and those only repopulate when you build up your ecosystems. So there is a puzzle, and you can raise that up to 2, 3, 4 of those pollution and wildlife cards that you're starting with at the start. The standard level was already a challenge, so that is definitely a challenge to grow into. So that's how the solo mode works.
So moving on to components, and we said this at the start, this is a preview copy, so components are likely to change. There are a couple components that we already know will definitely change, and that's the wildlife tokens will become sturdier. The white color for the player board and the player frames is going to be green. Other things that are included in the box are the 4 player boards that come in different colors, and it represents like a city that's starting to get overgrown. The different frames, so a small and a large frame. There's also the middle board, and that's double layered, so when you put the 2 tokens in, they really kind of slot in nicely.
Yeah, and all of that stuff is fairly clear. That double layer board is definitely helpful. Also, there's a bag that you're keeping all of those tokens in, and there are the chunkier ecosystem tokens. So there are 2 different sizes of those. There's the level 1 and the level 2, obviously. But the nice thing is that the level 2 are obviously double the size of the level 1, and the level 1 are quite a bit bigger than the cardboard tokens. So you can really see at a glance what you've got on your board without thinking about it too much. There's also the scoring right on those tokens, so that tells you what they're going to score at the end of the game. That makes life a little bit easier. And they are this kind of nice chunky, I don't know if they're wood, but they feel wood-ish. So there is a chunkiness to them.
And it's really what you're trying to do is to transform this city into these ecosystems. So it is nice that these bigger, thicker tiles really start to fill up your board.
One other cool thing is that the ether board can actually sit inside the top of the box to create kind of a cool 3D thing. And this is something we didn't actually notice until after we'd finished filming. So you're going to see a bit of a mix of photos in here, but if you do place it on top of the box, it does create a really cool 3D effect.
So on to final thoughts, and this is a paid preview, so it'll be opinion free. And speaking of previews, there is a Kickstarter preview page up now, so if you're interested in checking it out, we'll have a link to the preview page in the description.
And again, Overgrown is a tile placement game, and it is really built around that mechanic of the frames and the drafting with frames that are like these aura in the ether as you
rebuild these abandoned cities. Well, at least you rewild these abandoned cities. And this is a 1 to 4 player game. It's very puzzly. The 1 player game especially is puzzly, and is a fairly quick tile placement game, but with a chunk of interaction.
And there's also the pacing, because every turn you have to add tiles to your board, but there's only space for 15 tiles. So you're trying to group your tiles to create these ecosystems, because that's going to open up more space on your board. So there's this ebb and flow throughout the game as your board gets more crowded and less crowded.
And that is it. That is Overgrown. And again, this is a paid Kickstarter preview. And if you're interested in that Kickstarter, there is a link in the description. We're not sure exactly when it goes live. Depends when you're watching this. It might be live right now, but follow that link for more information.
Thank you so much for watching. As usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.